Okay, what we worked on today in class was our study guide for our exam. If you have me for first and second period, then you take your exam tomorrow. If you have me for 7th and 8th, then you will take it Thursday. So our exam schedule is 1, 3, 5 tomorrow. Wednesday is 2, 4, 6, and Thursday is 7, 8. All right, so one thing we went over today, and the main thing we went over today was the study guide. So I'm going to kind of go through what we talked about, because the study guide is very similar to the actual exam. So it's also comprehensive, kind of from like the very beginning when we started in August till now. So it's just 20 questions total. And again, your exam will have 20 questions as well. All right, so number 1 and 2 talk about rational and irrational numbers. We know for it to be a rational number, it has to be able to be written as a fraction. If it is a decimal, it has to be a terminating or repeating one. If it's a square root situation, you've got to have a perfect square underneath there, or it will result in one of those decimals that is non-repeating, non-terminating. If you have pi, that's what the pi symbol here, it's always irrational, so that's definitely not your answer for this one, since they're asking for a rational number. Both square root of 6 and square root of 8 are both not perfect squares, so when you go to square root them, you'll see that they're going to give you a long, crazy decimal. So the only choice on this one was -10, so that's when we marked C. Also, I gave them a scenario of how the only way that something with pi would ever be rational was if it had pi over pi, so that it would cancel out and leave you with just your coefficient here as 3. So that's the only way that anything with pi would be a rational number. If you have something like down here, 7 pi, it's still going to be irrational because there's nothing underneath there to make it cancel out. So if you are selecting on this one, all irrational numbers, we chose B and E because A, it's a perfect square. Square root of 81 gives you 9. C is a terminating decimal. D is written as a fraction. So those are all rational numbers. We want irrational. So B and E are correct. Those are your answers. All right, on this 2 questions, actually, these are dealing with scientific notation and standard form. I gave you just ones that you had to convert since you don't have your yellow calculators to do the operations with. So on this one, we talked about in class that if you have times 10 to the negative anything, that's going to mean that your number is getting smaller. So that's why we marked out A and D. And then this told me I was going to move my number left 5 times. So we're going to go from the original decimal place. We're going to go 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. We put 4 zeros in. And so we look for the answer that have 4 zeros and then the 4, 8, 6, 5. So that's why we chose B. On number 4, you have a positive exponent. So obviously that's going to tell me that the number is going to get larger. So C and D are out. And then this means you're going to move to the right 4 spaces. So we go from the decimal and we're going to go 1, 2, 3, 4. And that's going to give us the answer here, 30,240. So your answer choice is A. All right, on these, they're getting into the equations. So we looked at each question. What's the value of x? So we looked at the equation to figure out what first step needed to be. And it was distributive property, since we saw the parentheses and saw the number outside of them. So when we distributed, we got -12x plus 8. We brought down our other side. Then we decided to move our variable to the left. So I said -8x. -8x here, -12x is going to give us a -20x. Bring down your 8, bring down your 28. Move our constants to the right. So we have to subtract. And our simplified would be -20x equals 20. And our last step would be to divide by that coefficient, which is -20. So x equals -1 is your final answer there. So C is your answer choice. All right, we also talked about that if this was asking how many solutions you would have, like the next question is going to, if you have x equals -1, that means you have one solution. You still have your variable, and it's equal to one specific number. So one solution. Now on this number 6, we still had to distribute. When we did, we also saw that we had like terms on that left side. We combined them. And then we noticed that our variable terms were the same. So when we went to move them, they both canceled out. All you have left is 2 equals 10, which is not a true statement. So we said it was no solution. Again, we also said once we knew the variables canceled out, it could not be the answer choice that says exactly one solution. It had to be one of the two. And the reason being it's this one is no solution is because they are not equal. All right, number 7 is actually more simple than the last two. So we've got to distribute, and then it goes right into a two-step equation. So here, when we distributed, we got 6x minus 30 equals 90. All you have to do is add 30 to get that 6x by itself. We get 120 on this side, and then divide out 6. It's going to give you x equals 20. And once again, if it asks you how many solutions it has, you would say 1. Number 8 is asking you how many solutions. When I distributed, well, actually we did two things. We combined like terms over here because we saw we could say 15x minus 10x. That gave me 5x. Then I distributed on this side and got negative 10x minus 15. All right, then I wanted to move my variables to the left, so I said plus 10x plus 10x. Now, the moment I saw that they did not cancel out, that's why we marked out A and B. We also marked out C because it says that you have exactly 2 solutions. Well, on none of these can we have 2 solutions. We either have 1, you have infinitely many, or no solutions. You cannot have exactly 2. This is not, until you have an x squared here, that's not going to be an option. So we knew that it was going to be exactly 1 solution. We finished working it out, and we actually got to something that's going to give us either a decimal or a fraction, so we just left it as a fraction. But again, the fact that we still have our variable, and it's equal to 1 specific number, then that's why we have exactly 1 solution. All right, on this one we have 2 volume questions. The top one is a sphere, and then number 10 is a cylinder. At the top, it does give us a radius of 8 inches for the sphere, so we do have the information we need to find the volume, but the main thing I told them to pay attention to is this also says it's 1/4 full. So that meant after I found the volume, I had to remember to divide that by 4 to get my final answer of 535.9. So your answer is C. And be careful about that because you can tell the total volume is obviously an answer choice as well. On number 10, we have our cylinder. This is our formula for a cylinder. Obviously, we need a radius, not a diameter. So the first thing we did was half that. And then we plugged in our amounts. We used 3.14 for pi. We used our radius as 6 squared, and times our height of 4. And we got a final answer of 452.2 rounded to the nearest tenth. Okay, these problems start the transformation questions. 11 and 12 are really based on you knowing that reflecting, rotating, translating, all 3 of those transformations do not change anything about the shape except the location of it, but it does not change anything about the size. So if you look at number 11, there's have a triangle ABC. They say it's reflected across the y-axis, and that the length of the original AB was 4 units. They want to know what's the length of the new line segment AB. So if it's reflected, it's still the same amount. So that's why if it was originally 4 units, it's still going to be 4 units. Same thing in number 12. They say that we rotated this shape, this triangle, 90 degrees clockwise, and they want to know the new measure of angle, the D, after they have rotated it. But again, it does not change. So if angle D was originally 65 degrees, it is still going to be 65 degrees. So that's why your answer choice is B on this one. All right, on this one, number 13 says, what types of transformations result in congruent triangles or any shape, and that matters. First off, we definitely know that dilations are not going to be included in this because they change the shape of it. They make it bigger or smaller. B and D use the words only, and B only includes reflections and rotations, so it's missing translations. And D is missing reflection and rotation. C is the only option because it has all 3 of the ones that we need. All 3 of those will produce congruent shapes. All right, number 14, they give you a point on the triangle. They say it's dilated by a scale factor of 3. When we're doing scale factor, we're using multiplication. So they want to know the new coordinates. So what we did was for 4 and 5, both of them, we have to multiply times 3. That's going to give us 12 over here, 15 over here. So our answer choice is B. All right, number 15, just ask about the keywords. If it says flips the shape over an axis, what does that mean? That's going for reflection. We also added in, if you see the word slides, that's a translation. Turns is a rotation, and changes size, that's going to be a dilation. All right, 16, they're starting talking about triangles, and we drew a picture and said, okay, well, if angle A is 90 degrees, angle B is 6x, and angle C is 2x plus 10, then we know that all three of those added together can give us, should be equal to 180. So we're trying to solve for the value of x. So all three angles in a triangle add up to give you 180. When I did this, I combined like terms. 6x and 2x gives me 8x. 90 and 10 give me 100. Bring down the 180. We're going to subtract, and we get 8x equals 80. Divide by 8, and x equals 10. So your final answer on this one, that's all they want to know, is what is the value of x? So that is 10. All right, these two questions ask about parallel lines cut by transversal. On your exam, they will already have pictures. This time we drew them. Main thing you need to know is that we talked about how in this situation with parallel lines cut by transversal, all the acute angles are equal to each other, all the obtuse angles are equal to each other. So if I look at this right here and it says you have an acute angle of 67 degrees and another angle that's obtuse, what is the measure of the obtuse angle? Then I know that if this, we're trying to find this, is the same as this one right here. So I obviously know that they are supplementary, and in this situation, an obtuse angle and an acute angle, together they always equal 180. So if I do 180 minus the 67, I know that leaves me with 113. That's why answer choice is B. Number 18 is asking about, same thing, parallel lines cut by transversal, but this time they say they have alternate exterior angles, angle 1 and angle 8. And they tell you that angle 1 is already 130 degrees. Angle 8, if they're alternate exterior, they are congruent, which means that if this one is 130, so is 8. So that's why we chose B, 130 degrees. All right, last two dealt with right triangles and Pythagorean theorem. So the first, number 19, asks which one can create a right triangle, and 20 asks which one do not make a right triangle. So the ones that can create a right triangle, that's when you plug in your numbers, and then when you add it together, it equals c squared. So a squared plus b squared together equals c squared. So we chose the first, and always make sure these little circles are because we're always making sure we know what the largest side is, because it has to go in place of c. All right, so like on choice A, we have 4 squared plus 5 squared equals 6 squared. But that's going to give us 16 and 25 and 36. 16 and 25 are obviously not 36. It's 41. They are not equal, so they do not make a right triangle. When you look at B, you use, again, 65 is your largest. So 39 squared plus 52 squared equals 65 squared. 39 squared is 1,521. 52 squared is 2,704. 65 squared is 4,225. And so when I add these up here, I actually get 4,225. So it matches the other side, which means B is our answer. All right, number 20 is asking us which ones do not make a right triangle. So we're going to do the same same process as we did before, but we're looking for one that does not work, does not make a right triangle. So on this one, when we added it together, it actually did equal 625 on both sides. So that's why I meant X. It should really be here, saying that that's not one of your choices. It is equal to each other, but remember, we're looking for one that does not make a right triangle. All right, so when we plugged in B, we did the same thing. It gave me 164 is equal to 225, which is obviously not true. So that one would be your answer, B, because it is not true, so it does not form a right triangle, excuse me. All right, this is your last problems for the study guide. Just make sure you look over them. Let me know if you have any questions. Make sure you remember, if you have me for first and second, your exam is tomorrow on Tuesday. And if you have me for 7th, 8th, your exam is on Thursday.